Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton Reimer today. How you doing, Dayton?
Oh, pretty good. I'm glad to be back. Wasn't here for the last one, so
Yeah,
yeah, no, things are good.
happy to have you back. It's been an insane week in Ottawa. It's there's been rumors everywhere and people talking, and it looks like there's going to be a lot of movement here in the next week or so. So we have a lot to get to. But before we do that, this one's not so much a rumor, and it's not really news either, but it's kind of a talking point. I know that you're very well connected to the draft and you kind of have your eyes on some certain players, but Sam Dickinson did an interview with Mark Masters and had a conversation about what it would mean to be drafted to Ottawa. And he knows that his name has been linked to Ottawa in a few different places. He's from Toronto. He could be a pretty good target for Ottawa outside of him being a left-handed defenseman. But I mean, after this week, who knows? That might be a position of need for Ottawa. So, what do you think of Sam Dickinson, and is he somebody that Ottawa should be targeting?
Yeah, I think so. I wrote a post a couple of weeks ago now that laid out, I think, what Sam Dickinson could bring to the Senators and why he should be a target. I don't think he's a perfect target. There are some concerns, but he is one of the most well-rounded defensemen heading into the NHL draft. He's going to be a top 10 pick. If he falls out of the top 10, that would be insane.
Yeah.
He brings a lot of offense. He has a well-rounded defensive side. He was one of like he was kind of a shutdown guy in the Memorial Cup and in the playoffs for the London Knights. But he also, like I said, brings a lot of offense. He had 70 points in 68 games this season. So he is kind of a total package. The only concern is that he shoots left. And like you mentioned, there could be an opening if some of the rumors that have been circulating do come to pass. And I also think that the Senators' left-handed defensive depth isn't fantastic. Like it's good, especially with the guys that you have right now in the NHL. But beyond that, you don't have anybody who could slip into the top four, and definitely not the top two. Top four, maybe. Top two, definitely not. And Dickinson would give them another option. And I don't think the Senators should be, I guess, turning their nose up at somebody who doesn't quite fit because you never know who's going to fit.
Yeah, and I mean the only argument I have against that is you never know let's say it's another 2 years until Sam Dickinson is a full-time NHL player. He spends 2 more years in junior, or he spends a year in junior and a year in the AHL, whatever it is. Let's just say 2 years until he's a full-time NHL player. You're going to have a 23-year-old Jake Sanderson as your top left-handed defenseman. You don't need another number one guy like that, which I believe Sam Dickinson is going to be. Would you absolutely love to have one? Absolutely. And whether it's going to be Chikrin or Shabbat still in the lineup or neither, having somebody like Sam Dickinson on your second pair, you make room for a guy like that. And so, no, the Senators don't need another number one guy, but having another option is really really good. And Sam Dickinson, when I watch his game, I see a lot of what Jake Sanderson brings, and I think that that could be a really really good 1-2 punch if that's what Ottawa decides to go with. Because with Chikrin and Shabbat, I mean, we're going to talk about both of them in a little bit, but you don't have that true two-way kind of play from them. And do you really want one of them being your number one guy at this point if Jake Sanderson gets hurt? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think any NHL team has ever complained about having too much talent on their
Yeah.
roster. So,
Well, and look at what Tampa Bay did. I mean, we've referenced it a million times with the three-headed monster that they ran with Hedman, Sergachev, and McDonough, and they said, you know what, things haven't been working. We're going to go back and get McDonough. So they missed that. So Ottawa certainly needs to take the best player available, I think. And if it's Sam Dickinson on for left-handed defenseman, you take it because you're going to need him someday. And if not, he's going to be a really valuable trade chip. I mean, like people forget that if Ottawa didn't need Jake Sanderson coming out of when he was coming out of the NCAA, you could trade him. He had a ton of value. Maybe not fifth overall value, but he had a ton of value. So worst case scenario, you can trade somebody. You can always trade somebody. So just wanted to touch base on Sam Dickinson a little bit. Next up on the list, Shane Pinto. We just talked about a lot about Jake Sanderson. Let's go to another Nodak Sen. And Shane Pinto seems to be looking for a very large contract. Given the fact that he played 41 games last year, he is looking for $5 million on a 5 or 6 year deal. Is that something you'd be willing to give him? It sounds like Ottawa is looking more like a 2 year deal, so that they don't have to shell out the 5 million. But where do you sit with the Pinto contract?
I think if it was anywhere other than Ottawa, I would be okay with it.
That's fair.
Uh, it's just Ottawa has too much history of signing young guys early in their career after a bright start, and then it fails like 90% of the time. And it shouldn't be that frequent, but it is in Ottawa, right? You got Josh Norris, great season, gets an $8 million deal. He hasn't touched that level of success since. You got Colin White. Like those are the two most egregious examples, but you could probably even throw in Anton. No, not Anton. Goodness, why did I blank? Jonas Corposalo.
Yes.
He had a really good season in LA. It was very brief, and you bring him in, sign him big, and oh, that's not great. So I have seen that they're also looking at a bridge deal. I think you kind of touched on that. It's looking at 2 to 3 years, maybe 3.5. That's okay. Will it be, incredibly valuable afterwards and maybe up to an $8 million deal? Sure, possibly. At that point, you probably don't have Norris anymore. I don't
Yeah.
think he's sticking around long enough to finish Pinto's bridge deal, especially the way that things are going. I'm a bit more of a skeptic for Norris.
Yeah, I think a lot of people around Ottawa are pretty pessimistic about the future of Josh Norris in Ottawa.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think a bridge deal is what he should sign because then he could really cash in. I understand why Ottawa would want long term, but a bridge is usually a good compromise between two parties, and it's worked out in several different markets. And I think Ottawa should just follow suit in that.
Yeah, you see, Ottawa, they did not want to give out any bridge deals, and I think that was a bit of a fear of them wanting out. Like, let's commit to these guys, let's have them commit to us. Was I think a bigger issue. So you see Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stutzel, Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot. They're all signing 6 plus year deals. You mentioned Colin White, you mentioned Josh Norris. For every one of those players, you also have a Tim Stutzel and a Jake Sanderson. So there are contracts, or Drake Batherson, which is a perfect comparable. I think that when Drake Batherson signed his $5 million deal, or 4.95, whatever, I think I would take Shane Pinto today over the day that Drake Batherson signed that contract.
No, that's a fair point. I think Pinto could become better than Batherson,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm just, I don't know. There's a hesitancy in signing somebody to 5 million after a partial season.
Yeah. And to be fair, his offense this year was on pace to be much better than last year. He would have scored. He was on pace for 18 goals, 36 assists, for 54 points, which would be almost 20 points more than his total last season in all 82 games. So he was on pace to be a 50 goal center, or a 50 point center. Wish he was a 50 goal center. Um, but yeah, he's just, again, you can only project so far ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I I don't know if you're swaying me to your side today. Um, I appreciate the effort, but I think if he was on pace, like how many guys were on pace to be really, really good and then just disappeared? Like Nail Yakupov had one of the best rookie seasons when he came in, and it was a shortened season, but he still was lights out, really talented, and then disappears off the face of the earth. He can't even touch his rookie totals.
Yeah, he
Right? You never
was.
know what's going to happen. And with Ottawa's cap situation and a lot of the guys who will be coming up, and Pinto isn't going to be a first line center. Like you said, I think
Yeah,
he could be, maybe he could touch 70 points if his line mates are really good on the second. I would love to see him on a third line as a solid two-way center playing beside two guys who can put up points, and he's like a 50, 60 point guy. I think that is the ideal situation. I think that's why he was drafted. I don't want to pay more than 5 million for that.
So my last rebuttal to you, in an attempt to sway you into giving in on the $5 million deal, uh, do you are you not okay with signing a third line center to $5 million with the cap going up $4 million a year at the minimum? For
I don't know.
Shane Pinto projects to be a pretty high end third line center. Like we're not
Yes.
talking about like I don't know. I can't even think of an example, but like it's not like we're talking about Mark Kastelik, who's just going to fill in on the third line,
Yeah,
right?
no, he's not a grinder. He's
Yeah,
a very talented two-way guy who could score like 30 goals in the right situation. That's fantastic. I could go up to 6 million, but the way that people are kind of talking about him, it's like we can't lose him, we can't lose him. It's like you could. It would suck, but you can find somebody to replace Shane Pinto. And if you're trying to lock him up right now, long term, I think that is a bit of a mistake.
fair enough. We're gonna move on to another bottom six player since that's all Shane Pinto is to you.
Well,
uh,
going for the cheap shots here.
Mathieu Joseph. It sounds like Ottawa's trying to get rid of him before the draft. His $2.95 million looked a whole lot better this season than it did last season, but still not ideal. Maybe even a little bit less ideal is Brandon Tanev, who has $3.5 million for one more year, opposed to Mathieu Joseph's 2 years. Very similar like point totals, similar impacts, different skill sets, but they both make a pretty similar impact on a lineup. What do you think of just the concept of moving Joseph out and bringing Tanev in? And part of bringing Brandon Tanev in is going to be to incentivize Chris Tanev in joining the team. So if you have any thoughts on Chris Tanev joining, you can add that in at the end too.
Well, that whole situation reminds me of, I think it was back in 2005, 2006, coming out of the lockout, the Anaheim Ducks acquired Rob Niedermeyer. And I can't remember from whom again, but then they also signed Scott Niedermeyer. Or maybe that was the trade and then it was signed. They brought in both brothers to the
Yeah.
Ducks. Surprise, surprise, they win the cup, right? Now, Scott Niedermeyer is a Hall of Famer. Chris Tanev and Brandon Tanev are not. Um, it, Even the most glowing reports don't have them anywhere close to that. Doesn't mean that they're not effective. I don't just see them as a bottom pairing guy. Um, I think it's a really good move. I think maybe his price is a little bit high, but if you are kind of working that angle, I think that would be great. I think Joseph has kind of made himself as expendable. Like, he's been really good, but also inconsistent. He's meshed well with some guys, but then they keep moving around. And I don't know. I don't know if he has a long-term future on this team. And if they were going to bring in his brother, Pierre-Olivier Joseph from the Penguins, that would be great. He's a talented depth defenseman, but I don't think they're going to do that. And I don't think Pittsburgh wants to get rid of him. So let's go with the Tanev angle. They're local too, aren't they? Are they Ottawa or Ontario?
I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Might be wet
I
there.
I thought they're from Toronto. Yeah,
Okay. So not local, but kind of.
I don't know why I had Saskatchewan in my head.
Hmm. There is a lot of
Um,
hockey players from Saskatchewan.
there is. I looked it up for you by the way. So they traded for Rob Niedermeyer in the 0203 season, and then signed Niedermeyer in the lockout,
Okay.
or Scott Niedermeyer.
Okay. So I did have that right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I think bringing in the Tanevs brings kind of that thing that Steve Stais has been looking for, and that's quality veterans. You're not bringing in like you're not going to trade a second round pick for Derek Stepan again. That's not what's going to happen with the Brandon Tanev trade. The same premise is there. Like bringing in, I'll be honest, bringing in Derek Stepan, I really liked the deal. Not for a second round pick, maybe a fifth round pick would have been fine. And I like the premise of it. You need these guys, these quality depth players that can do well in the lineup and help the young guys. That's what Ottawa needs right now is to get somebody like Brandon Tanev, who's been there, done that. he needs to come in and just kind of mentor some of these guys and just be a presence in the locker room. And we've all seen from his NHL mug shots that he is one of the funniest guys in the league. The way he always has his eyes wide open, and then if he can bring Chris Tanev along with him, that's an absolute win. Chris Tanev should be one of the top targets for Ottawa this offseason. In some other news, Jacob Markstrom has finally been dealt. Matthew and I talked about this on a video on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel last night. And my take on it was finally Calgary and New Jersey decided to shut up and kiss. It was always going to happen. Ottawa seemed to be in on Markstrom pretty strong, but it was inevitable that it was going to happen to be the Devils getting them. So Ottawa is shifting gears to Linus Ullmark, and it sounds like only Linus Ullmark. Reports today from David Pagnotta. Some people don't love his reporting. Some people do, but he did report today that Linus Ullmark would be willing to waive his no trade clause to go to Ottawa. He is on the list, but he would be willing to waive it. And Lalims Martian, who again isn't like with a big company or anything, but he has a lot of connections and posts online, and he said the same thing, that Linus Ullmark has waived his no trade clause. It's just a matter of Steve Staios and Don Sweeney getting a deal done. We kind of talked about Ullmark with you a few weeks ago, how you don't think that he is the solution and that getting a goaltender is the solution. But now that we might be on the eve of the trade, what are your thoughts?
Pretty much the same as before. It's like you said, not the solution. I think there are bigger issues. I think Chris Tanev would help those issues significantly. So if that's in the ballpark, and I think it's a fantastic upgrade. I think Korpisalo just hasn't been the guy. He needed a lot of support, and unfortunately, Forsberg just isn't a guy who can come in and play half a season to top numbers. He can bail out a starter frequently. I love him as like a 1B situation where he's playing maybe 30 games. But you need a guy who can play like those 50, 60, which is kind of a rarity now. And I think Ullmark could almost be one of those guys. I don't think he's hit that recently, but he's been in the 40, 50 range, I'm pretty sure.
Let me bring that up right now. He has never played 50 games in a season.
Okay. Has he been in the 40s?
Yes, every
Okay.
year, each of the past 3 years.
Yeah. So he can handle the workload and he has the numbers to back him up. Of course, the Bruins are much better defensively, so don't expect those numbers to follow him to Ottawa
Yeah.
unless the defense core is completely shaken up. There we go. Um, no, I think it's a good deal. I don't think Staios is going to overpay. He hasn't shown that he's going to do that just to bring in somebody. Um, yeah, it's an upgrade. I don't think it's the solution, but it's definitely a step worth taking.
It sounds like the rumored asking price is Jacob Chikrin, 25th overall, so Boston's first round pick back, and a prospect. Are you willing to give up a package that big for Linus Ullmark?
Um, Maybe not the prospect, but the first two for sure.
You'll give up Chikrin in 25th for
Yep.
Ullmark?
Yeah, they're
As
two guys
long
who have
as,
1 years.
yeah, I think that he needs to come with an extension. If he's willing to waive his no move clause and come to Ottawa, or no trade clause and come to Ottawa, I'm willing to bet he's willing to talk extension. That's how it works. I would like to see something figured out before the trade is done, though. I don't want to see another. Even with Chikrin, he had 2 years left. That's still coming back to bite him. If Chikrin had 4 more years left on his deal, I think that Thomas Chabot is probably the one leaving. And if Alex DeBrincat had 4 more years on his deal, I'm sure that he's still an Ottawa Senator and everything is fine and dandy. Like, it's just right now, Ottawa needs somebody to come in and commit. One of these big trades that they're doing, they need a long term reassurance.
Yep, definitely for sure.
So, Jacob Chikrin probably getting really, really sick of seeing his name in trade rumors. He seemed very relieved to finally be traded out of Arizona to come to Ottawa, and he kind of just said, like, I've, I'm getting tired of seeing my name everywhere. And we're less than 18 months later, and here it is again. He's probably top five on most trade bait boards. and he's probably gone before the draft, like within the next week. So uh, we talked about Boston a little bit. It sounds like Philadelphia and Ottawa are cooking up quite the deal. Couple people have chimed in on this. Travis Yost kind of started off the conversation. He's the one that broke the Jacob Markstrom trade too. Um, but he said that they have a framework for a deal in place, and it's probably going to happen a little bit closer to the draft. Some people have said it was Jordan Schmaltz who posted that Ottawa is going to be moving a defenseman and that they have multiple big name defensemen on the trade block. So he didn't get into specifics who that is. I don't imagine it's Sanderson. I don't imagine it's Zub. I wonder if Staios is trying to move Shabbat and Chikrin both. That would be very interesting. But what are some pieces from Philadelphia that you'd be looking to take back?
Ooh.
It's hard because we don't know. Like, is this just going to be Mathieu Joseph and a third round pick for Scott Lawton? Is it going
Mhm.
to be Jacob Chikrin and seventh overall for Travis Konechny and 12th overall? Like, we have no idea the magnitude of this kind of trade, but what kind of assets are you looking at in Philadelphia?
Well, there's been, of course, a few rumors that have been talked about. There's been Scott Lawton, Travis Konechny has been talked about. I don't foresee that, but that would be a good get. I think he definitely fits what the Senators are building. He has really high upside, just had almost a 70-point season, and appears to be kind of, on the rise here. But he also just was named the assistant captain on a team that is trying to build something as well.
It's also the same team that scratched their captain last year. So
Yes,
I take that with a grain of salt.
that's fair. Torts is still there, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you never really can bet on anything when Torts is your coach.
Yeah.
You never quite know. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names that I'd be interested in. Joel Farabee, I think he's an interesting player, young, has is on the left side, left wing, but you know, has the skill, 50-point guy. Even some of their defensemen, like Cam York, I know he's on a little on the other side, undersized, but he's really skilled. I like Travis Sanheim as a shutdown guy. Morgan Frost is interesting. Tyson Forster. There's a lot of guys I would not be mad at. I don't know if any of those are in the move, but if you're moving
Yeah.
someone like Shabbat or Chikrin, I would expect at least one of those guys.
Yeah, the name that I keep looking at is Joel Farabee. A lot of comparisons between him and Drake Batherson were made, and he signed a very similar contract. He has 4 years left at $5 million. We talked a lot about $5 million men today, but yeah, he scored 22 goals and 50 points this year. He's been kind of developing very well. He's going higher and higher in points every year. He's 24. He's a little bit slower than that comparable of Drake Batherson to getting his feet fully wet and turning into a true star. But he is one of those wingers that could do really, really well in Ottawa. And you look at their second line left wing spot, they have a hole there. And right now, Joel Farabee could be a really good option there. I saw 350 trade rumors today between Ottawa and Philadelphia. None of them really stuck out to me as being that could be really realistic or that could be I'd be really interested in that. But putting a couple of them together, I look at whether it's going to be Shabbat or Chikrin. I don't know. I don't know how other teams value both of them right now. I would imagine that they're fairly similar. Maybe Chikrin a little bit more valuable just because of his cap and whatnot. But would you do Jacob Chikrin seventh overall for Joel Farabee, 12th overall, and 32nd overall?
That's a pretty decent offer. I would definitely think about it. I think that is worth considering.
Yeah.
Farabee, like you said, 5 million. He signed that
2 years
um
ago. He's
two
played two
years
years
ago.
of that contract.
Yeah. And yeah, so he's making progress. 20 goal scorer last season. It's also his second season as a 20 goal scorer. Getting that 12th back and another pick, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
I think
mad
that's
at
the
it.
kind of deal to expect.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you look at what Philadelphia wants. They obviously want to move into the top 10. I don't think that's a secret at all. And Steve Stais has said, like, if the right deal comes across my lap, I'm more than happy to trade back. And I mean, you look at this draft, you've done that plenty. There's a lot of good options at 12th overall. I mean, like, worst case scenario, if Ottawa's walking away with Beckett Seneca or Consta Helenius, that's a success.
Believe it or not, I'm actually writing a piece on why the Senators should target Beckett Seneca. So
Nice.
yeah, no, I think he is a fantastic fit for the Senators and won't be there beyond 12. I don't think he's
No,
absolutely shot up the draft. And if your trade is Joel Farabee, Beckett Seneca, and I don't know, you said a second round pick coming back as well, right?
the Florida's first round pick, so 32nd overall.
Oh, 32nd. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ottawa
That
might have
is,
to give up a second or a third or fourth, something like that. But I
yeah,
think
the
that that's
Senators
a
have a
pretty
couple of
solid
fourths,
trade.
I believe. Throw in
Yeah.
one of those because I think they're still giving up the better player in Chikrin.
Oh, 100%.
Um, but that locks up the Senators' top six.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting. And this is another one, like I just mentioned with Calgary and New Jersey. You look at these two teams and you kind of want to say, shut up and kiss. Like, just between all the Scott Laughton trade rumors over the past couple of years, I mean, Scott Laughton trade rumors was a Pierre Dorion DJ Smith thing. I wonder if that carried over. Dave Poulin knows a lot about Philadelphia. He knows a lot about the guys. So I don't know. This is either going to be extremely disappointing when it is Mathieu Joseph and a fourth round pick for Scott Laughton, or it's going to be a huge move that's going to change everything about how Ottawa is built right now.
I still wouldn't be mad at a Matthew Joseph third for Scott Laughton.
No, not at
You,
all. But just kind of with this hype, it's like,
oh, for
okay,
sure.
if
But
we're like 4 days in advance, we know that there's a trade happening and that's it. Why wait?
bringing this back to Shane Pinto, you have Scott Laughton. He's a third line guy. I think we
Yeah.
can safely, kind of pigeonhole him there. He's 30. He puts up 40, 50 points. You'd hope 50 points, but it's mainly been 30s. And that would then push Pinto into that second line role. You have someone like Laughton and then Pinto. I'm much more comfortable with that because otherwise you're making Pinto that third line guy, which again, not mad about. He has the skill to be a very, very good two-way guy. Um, but then you'd want somebody better than Pinto. And that's not as easy to find, at least
Yeah.
for a reasonable price. You'd be paying a lot for somebody better than Pinto. Get in Lawton, sign Pinto. Yeah, that's a pretty decent center depth.
Yeah, I think that Ottawa can do a lot of really good things this year. They have a lot of assets. I think they should be willing to move. So before we wrap things up, I have one final question for you. We're recording this before Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. Win or lose, is this Connor McDavid's Conn Smythe?
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. He's already got 40 points in the playoffs.
yeah,
That's absolutely ridiculous.
yeah. No,
Um,
it's when you start breaking Gretzky's records, no matter what they are, you've kind of put your name on the map for winning an award.
if Bobrovsky puts up a 72 save shutout and they win the cup tomorrow, does McDavid still win?
Yeah,
I think so
because
too.
Bobrovsky got pulled. You can't erase that.
Yeah. And he's got like I don't know, it's like a 653 save percentage over his last 7 periods. It's abysmal. So,
I think they
um,
got to him. I think they broke Bobrovsky, and it took him a long time, but they did it,
yeah.
and it's going to be tough to get that back.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that's gonna wrap everything up for today. This has been a very, very packed show, for which we haven't really had in a while. There hasn't been this many rumors come out in quite some time in Ottawa. But it's been nice to kind of get to talk about these things. I wrote about them in the Senators News and Rumors piece, but really getting to express opinions and kind of have some back and forth conversation is what makes this kind of conversation really valuable. So thanks for coming on as always, and thanks for having this conversation. And if you all enjoyed this episode, Make sure to leave a like and a comment and check out all the rest of the content on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel and the hockeywriters.com. There's tons of draft content. So make sure to check all that out. We'll see you next time.